Hi, I'm Rosanne and welcome to my garden. It's the middle of winter and except for the beautiful evergreens, most of the garden is dormant. It's the perfect time of year to begin planning for the next garden season. In an earlier video of mine, Landscaping Tips for Curb Appeal, I took you through the steps of how we designed our very first landscape project, our front garden. In this video, I'm going to take you through another landscape project, one that involved a large portion of our backyard that began after the loss of a large and majestic elm tree. I'll share the design process, show progress along the way, and finish 15 years later with a mature and evolved garden. Here's a diagram viewed from the top of what our yard looked like prior to the beginning of this project. The elm tree had a commanding presence in our garden. Its canopy covered almost the entire width of our yard. We were avid shade gardeners with a large collection of hosta when the tree succumbed to disease and needed to be removed. In an instant, our garden went from mostly shade to mostly sun. Faced with such a dramatic change already, we decided it was the perfect opportunity to change other things in the garden too, and so began the project. When starting on a new garden project, I like to look around for inspiration. I make a point of visiting garden centers and other gardens for new plant ideas and design ideas. That's how I realized that our plan would need to include a spring flowering crabapple tree, and that we could and should do something fun with the enormous tree stump. I was also inspired by P. Allen Smith and his 2003 book on garden design. I embraced the idea of not revealing the entire garden all at once, thereby creating a sense of mystery and anticipation. To keep the garden feeling unified, which I think is soothing, I recommend selecting a garden style or aesthetic and sticking to it over the years. When making garden decisions, let your theme guide you. We had already begun developing an Enchanted theme elsewhere in our garden and wanted to continue this project striving for the same look, complete with curvy paths, whimsical accents, and unusual trees. My husband and I discussed what we really wanted in our backyard and came up with a wish list of what we thought was reasonable to accomplish within the next year. Our wish list included a larger patio area with more room for entertaining, at least one more seating area, lots of trees for structure, layering, and shade, more privacy with hidden views and mystery, less turf but enough space for a dog to run and play, and a new fence. Now that we established our theme or style and our wish list, it was time to get to the details, such as measurements, sun exposure, and soil type. Measuring our space was admittedly the hardest. We used a tape measure and graph paper to mark out the property lines, structures, and trees and shrubs. What you see here is a modern digital version of our initial drawing. As far as assessing the garden's conditions, things were relatively straightforward. We had full sun and similar soil to that found in the front yard, which was slightly alkaline with medium coarseness. As long as we stayed away from acid-loving plants, most plants would work just fine. Deciding on the permanent or semi-permanent features of the garden, also referred to as the bones of the garden, should be the first step in a garden design. For us, it began with the fence. Because of our dog Elsie, installing a new fence was a priority. We decided on a natural cedar picket fence with a scalloped top line. I think it worked well with our Enchanted theme. Although we tried to keep our options open for the tree stump, in the end we decided to make it into a bench. We had a professional chainsaw artist transform the stump into this adorable bench, complete with a curious bunny. The bench would become a focal point in the back garden and provided needed seating, something on our wish list. We didn't waste any time getting some new greenery and planted a weeping white pine tree on each side of the bench. Their unusual drooping structure looked like something straight out of a fairy tale. Now came the heart of the design, the patio area and the back garden. Before, our patio area consisted of a decaying timber retaining wall and concrete stairs and patio. We decided to replace all of that with natural stone that matched the hardscape we had elsewhere in our garden. By continuing with the same stone, complete with Irish moss, the new area would soon blend perfectly with the existing garden. We decided to double the size of the patio to approximately 10 feet by 20 feet and save the 5 weigela growing above the retaining wall. I loved their burgundy-hued foliage and the uniformity and structure they provided. As usual, my husband Steve did all of the stonework. He used Sandy Creek sandstone for the retaining wall, stairs, and patio. Here are some scenes of this part of the garden as it evolved throughout the years. This area has definitely stood the test of time. It looked good back then, and it looks good now. Years after the patio project, my husband built a retaining wall on the other side of the stairs. He finished it off by planting stone crop sedum between the steps. What a great look! In tandem with the design of the patio area, we designed the backyard garden. I had 2 thoughts for the design. The first was to break the garden into 2 rooms, separated by a green wall or hedge and an arbor covering the entrance. The second plan was to create a center island bed, leaving a wide turf path surrounding it. In the end, we decided on the center island approach. It seemed to make the most sense for us, plus it unified the garden rather than dividing it. The wide path surrounding the island bed was ideal for our dog to run laps, and a large area toward the back of the garden by the shed provided another area for us to entertain. We surrounded the bed with stone edgers to match the other borders in our garden. The stone really helps to set off the grass path. I find the lush green turf grass to be a soothing balance to the activity of the flower beds. Not only is it practical, it has a calming effect. Now we were ready to select the plants, both for the center island bed and the area surrounding the bench. We looked for plants that thrived in full sun, generally normal soil conditions, and were hardy to growing zone 4. We wanted a knockout view from the house and patio and decided on a Louisa crabapple tree on one end of the center island. Even as a small tree, it became a focal point. As it grew, its beautiful weeping habit became even more stunning, especially in the spring when it flowered. Louisa has more than beauty to offer. Its flowers provide nectar for the pollinators in the spring and fruits for the birds and other wildlife in the fall. Next, I wanted to plant evergreens for year-round interest and decided on 3 Africana spruce. They're unruly for a spruce and utterly charming with their chunky stature and uneven branches. I knew I had to have these when I saw their unusual red cones, which appear every spring. You can't help but smile when you see them. They started out small, but look at them now. By planting trees such as the crabapple and the spruce in the center island bed, we were intentionally creating privacy and a sense of mystery by blocking views of the rest of the garden. I think this helps to make the garden seem larger. There's a lot going on and you can't see it all at once. We filled in the bed with additional layers beginning with shrubs. All cottage-type enchanted gardens need roses, so we planted hardy shrub roses called Macy's Pride. We also planted the most unusual and endearing contorted filbert. The branches curl and twist and look like something out of this world. For more spring flowering presents, we planted lilac bushes. And for interesting foliage color, planted a purple leaf cherry and 3 small spirea. The perennials we planted came from within our own garden, divisions of hosta and daylilies. To add some more height to the bed, we introduced a structure for vining plants, and for many years we grew morning glories on it. Finally, to be guaranteed of season-long color, we planted annuals. Over the years, as the trees grew, some areas with full sun gave way to part sun, and a few of the shrubs were moved. Some died. Here's a scene of the center island as it is today. It's more diverse than our original plan and has added trees and shrubs. We leaned into the enchanted look and planted 4 weeping or crawling evergreens. I really couldn't name a favorite, but I do think the procumbent spruce is the showiest. The bright blue needles add both color and texture to the area. Its crawling habit and color complement Louisa. The spruce is about 10 years old and has easily doubled or even tripled in size. We have another, much younger, creeping type spruce, appropriately named Wells Emerald Creeper. Both of the spruce get about 6 or more hours of direct sunlight, adequate moisture, and have well-drained soil. Rabbits like the tender new needles, so for now we fence in the Wells Creeper year-round. On the north side of the bed, which became somewhat shaded and protected by the trees, we planted 2 unusual hemlocks. Consistent with our theme, this is a weeping hemlock. It's a very slow grower and more precious because of it. It has the most delicate draping shape. I have it planted to the north of the Africana spruce to protect it, but unfortunately it is also somewhat camouflaged. In the winter, without the additional protection from the shade of deciduous trees, its needles can burn, so we protect it from winter sun with burlap. This small mounded hemlock is Cole's prostrate. I have it situated very near the edge so that this gem can be easily seen. Most recently, we planted a nannyberry tree and a chokeberry to provide some height on the east end of the bed. They both produce berries that the birds love and are relatively small in stature, perfect for an urban garden. The nannyberry should grow no taller than 20 feet and the chokeberry no taller than 7. The rest of the bed is filled with an assortment of perennials, shrubs, and some special annuals. The composition and placement tends to change often, but there are a few reliable favorites that I count on every year. To begin, I have a large patch of delphinium. Most years I grow calla lilies next to it. I absolutely love the combination of the tall spikes of blue blossoms and the creamy single white bloom of the calla lily. Close to the edge of the border, I also have cherry calla lilies. The blooms open pink and get deeper in color as they age until they're a deep red. In our climate, calla bulbs do need to be dug up every fall and replanted every spring. 4 o'clocks, which I grow from seed every year, are another staple in our garden. They bloom generously all summer long and tend to open their buds later in the afternoon, hence their name. They grow quite large and help to fill out gaps in the garden. When the white callas start fading in late July, the soft white blooms of the devil's trumpet are just beginning to emerge. These datura bloom profusely in the middle to late summer and form the cutest but prickly seed pods in the fall. I harvest the seeds and grow these every spring. Sometimes they successfully self-seed. Early to midsummer, we typically have a beautiful mound of blue bachelor buttons. Unlike some, this centaurea is a perennial, and unfortunately, an absolute favorite of the rabbits. We often keep it fenced in all summer long. Other flowering plants include a beautiful shrub rose that starts out salmon-colored and opens to pink, or the strong and stately big blue salvia, which I start from seed every year. And of course, the big yellow daylilies that we have throughout our garden. We have other plants that come and go in the center island bed, but you've met all the stars. While we were designing the center island bed, we were also designing the bed along the fence. It was important for the garden to look integrated. Our goal was to create a green wall or a living fence to help create privacy. Rather than a hedge, we planted a variety of trees, shrubs, and perennials for a strong layering effect. Using different textures was also important to add more visual interest to a small space. For immediate height and mass, we planted 2 catalpa trees and 3 arborvitae along the fence line. Catalpa are such interesting trees. This picture, taken in our neighborhood, shows a mature catalpa. You can see its unusual and open branching habit, allowing sun to shine through. They also have the most beautiful white orchid-like blossoms in the spring, oversized leaves, and long bean-shaped seed pods in the fall. Catalpa have a reputation of being messy, but I think they're well worth it. Unfortunately, one of our catalpas died early on, so we replaced it with another very airy tree, a white spire birch. The white bark of the birch is absolutely stunning in every season. Additionally, in the areas surrounding the bench and weeping white pines, we planted more trees and shrubs. Here's a picture taken a year or 2 after planting. The diversity of textures and layers looks good, even if the area has not yet matured. This garden continued to evolve, as all gardens do. Over the years, as the garden matured, we lost some trees and shrubs and gained others. Perennials continued to shift as I tried new combinations. The wooden bench began to slowly deteriorate and needed to be replaced. Approaching the project as a work of art, my husband built this gorgeous stone bench in its place. It measures over 6 feet long and is a perfect place to rest while gardening. As a final note, as I wrap up this video, remember to take advantage of containers for season-long color and interest. I find that containers help to soften corners and brighten dark spaces. For even more visual interest, think about using small structures in your containers to create immediate height and mass. Or try tiered structures with trailing plants. As with gardening in general, the possibilities are endless. I hope you enjoyed this video of the backyard transformation. Thanks for watching.